Hi, I'm Nedrra Lanakila, and I'm talking with Kathleen Baxter today. I appreciate you having time to talk with us, perhaps.
It's been an amazing process.
How long has your journey been for you?
Well, since I was a little girl.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, so the background is that I grew up in a pretty traumatic situation, was, even conceived from a gang rape situation. So my entry into the world was rough, and I was a highly sensitive, somatic, intuitive from early on. So highly sensitive and in a difficult situation. And eventually I got sick with what was diagnosed as Lyme disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, parasite infections, mold toxicity, you name it, all that whole highly sensitive body crash. And it took me out of my workplace over 10 years ago now. So 2007 was when I went down. And then I was able to conceive 2 children. And then I really went down. So I was honestly on and off bedbound for the last 8 years. And that was a really hard time for being a go-getter and a doer. And sort of forced me to have to live in this body that was already highly sensitive, but now I couldn't get out and distract myself. And in that time, a lot more opening happened with me, I'd say energetically and intuitively. I got more and more sensitive to other people, to the point where I isolated because I couldn't handle the world, handle being around people, and I was sick and I felt icky. A year and a half ago, I started doing a process known as limbic system retraining my nervous system, retraining my brain to basically try to not react to the infections the same way. And that really got a lot of my functioning back. I went from bedbound and full-time care to my 2 kids to being able to live. And I had signed up to see Derek.
Now, how long ago is this at this point?
I found out about Derek through the medical medium world and signed up to have a consult with him 5-6 months ago, and looked him up. And I thought that his method sounded in line with what I was already going for, which is energetic alignment. And I wasn't interested in learning about another diet or learning about another supplement or chasing down another infection. I knew from the brain retraining that I was already doing that this was an energetic alignment issue and a belief system issue. And something about Derek's profile, I knew that could help sift out some things that I couldn't on my own do. I mean, you can retrain your brain to a certain level, but sometimes deep patterns are hard to get to on our own. And so I signed up for that consult, which took several months before I got to him. And then when he finally called me, I'm like, well, I'm doing a lot better than I was. And he tuned into my body and he's like, oh, but you're so far from where you can be. It feels like you're functioning well because you're up out of bed and in the world. But he's like, you were a strong athlete. You were very active. I'm like, yeah, that's true. And he's like, let's get you back there. I was functioning, but I didn't realize how much further I could go. And that's when I started working with him. And it's just been amazing. It's been an amazing process.
What about your physical limitations prior to Derek? What did that look like?
Yep.
Do you have some scaling references that might be helpful?
So the biggest thing was, I would say, my ability to be active beyond just normal daily day-to-day stuff. So I wasn't really exercising per se. I mean, I could go do my errands, but I had my life back, and I'm like, well, this is great. And Derek was like, there's so much more energy available, but when you haven't had it for 10 years, you don't discern that. You just say, well, at least I can go and do errands and pick up my kids and take them to the park. And since him, the things that have really shifted has been, for sure, my energy level. I used to love playing basketball. I'm playing basketball again, and hiking. I still have. I'd like to get to the point where I was before, which was limitless. I was limitless in my energy, really. But now I feel like it's opening for me.
What was that limitless like for you?
I would, bike 15 miles to work and work all day as a physical therapist and bike home and take my dog for a walk and go meet friends for dinner and go to sleep and get up and do it all over again. I didn't have a fear of energy conservation, which is what gets created with chronic fatigue. You get this constant monitoring of how much you're expending energy because it was taken from you. And so that habit of, well, if I go do this, I might not have energy for that. That's really what I'm trying to completely remove. And that's freedom, where I'm not deciding whether or not to do something because of how much energy it would expend, for example.
Yes.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
The other thing would be just general relaxation in my central nervous system from having, Lyme disease and parasites and virus. Like my nervous system always had kind of a wound up tone to it, even as brain retraining helped a lot and got me to a certain point, but there was still, I could feel and discern an underlying tone of hyperarousal in my nervous system that's just habituated. And especially when he's doing his work and I can feel him being a somatic intuitive, I feel him, that neurological tone will just soften like putty and I will feel like almost watery in my body. And I remember the first few times I would just drape myself over the couch while he was working because it was just so fluid. I'm like, oh, this is what my nervous system used to feel like before infection, before it got hyper stimulated. So that's also been continuing to shift for me.
Oh, that's great. So he would recommend to you to be in a quiet place?
I just did it. I couldn't stop it. When he would do his work, it was so like I would just, as if I was being massaged from the inside out. Like I could feel that neurological relaxation, almost like, I think that inner child in us doesn't want to be alone, and it felt a presence, and it was like, someone's here, which really it needs to be me being here, but Daerick is helping me, my energy system, know what it feels like to be here.
Felt safe and comforting for you.
Yeah, it felt like I was being comforted, absolutely. And other things where my detox mechanisms would have turned on more since he's been working with me, meaning like I'm sweating and I've never had to wear deodorant in my life, and now I have to wear deodorant after Daerick started doing this work. My body's letting go more.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just getting better and better. Like I'm thinking less and less and less about how much this might be energetically expending, for example. So that just even the thoughts about my energy are diminishing. And part of my healing has been realizing a lot of the things that were out of alignment. And that process has really kind of got catapulted right before I started working with Daerick. So despite life transition stress, having to support myself all of a sudden, I've got 2 little kids that I'm now, all that stress, and yet I'm still getting better. So I feel like in some ways he came into my life, the timing was like the universe was like, you're going to need you're doing great with your brain retraining and all, but you got a big shift coming. And this, I just feel like has been a big part of how I'm getting through, continuing to align myself with my soul urge. So yeah. And that's the other thing, working with Daerick, I have been terrified to get myself out in the world. I've known for a while I need to get a website together and officially put myself out there. And that has been a huge subconscious block for me because, like I said, being so sensitive, I have guarded myself. And somehow working with Daerick was a huge shift in this is my gift. I need to bring this to the world, and I will be guided somehow on how to use it. So I literally just launched my website 2 days ago, which is for me a huge, huge psychological breakthrough, to be seen and be able to be found. And I'm not even exactly sure what I do. I'm just doing me. So there's a lot of interesting leaps of faith that I feel like the work that Daerick has, that what we are co-creating together, because I believe he and I are co-creating something, is starting to move into the world.
Wow, that's fabulous.
I love Daerick. He immediately, I just felt a connection with him. He he's so dang intuitive. I mean, what he picks up on when he's like, oh, Friday, you know, I saw insomnia and some anxiety. I'm like, yeah, I didn't, that was true. I had a night of insomnia as I'm wrestling with my life changes. And he, you know, he's always spot on. Or like Tuesdays, like, I saw your body have this alignment. I'm like, I know, I felt like a lock into place that day. And, you know, so he absolutely is the real deal.
So he's not talking to you on that Tuesday or
No.
on that Friday.
No.
It's so just that's the appointment time in absence.
Yep. So the next week when we talk, he says, I worked on you on Tuesday and Friday, and here's what I saw. And I'm like, yes. And I felt, you know, and especially early on, I could feel when he was doing his work. Now, when he's doing it, my energy is higher and more resonant with where he was going. So it's way more subtle. Mm-hmm. I can sometimes tell, but the first few weeks, it was like, oh, Daerick's working on me. Daerick's working on me. It's a little, it's amazing. And so I have loved it. And, you know, I would tell other people that he absolutely is doing what he says. And it might be hard to discern if you're not somatically intuitive that way, but he's super compassionate. He's spot on with what he's seeing. And it's just been a great, like I said, co-creating experience. If Daerick does something that helps my energy system align. And that alignment, like I said, sifts to my consciousness what was keeping me out of alignment. But maybe others, they can passively, like I have more of an active process of choosing the alignment over the old thing. Like it's not a passive healing for me. It's more active. It's more collaborative. And I think this work is sort of teaching me how my healing will continue on my own, like align with my higher self. It offers me a certain alignment. And what's the counter offer from the old programming and the agreements? And learning to master that process is what the work with Daerick is helping me to do.
Wow, that's fabulous. And the out of alignment, is that in your physical body, your emotional, your mental?
All of it. I mean, absolutely. The out of alignment would be, you know, from a somatic point, you get into certain like trauma holding posturing. And sometimes when he's working on me, I notice like I said, my nervous system will kind of unwind and I'll be more fluid. And I might sit more upright, talk a little slower. I'm like, oh, this is more in alignment versus kind of controlling and go-getter. Emotionally, I feel more like trusting and accepting versus kind of being in like a vigilant. And mentally, it's the same thing. There's a difference there. And so I'm getting more of a contrast between my old habituated self and whatever it is that he does. I still don't understand it. I would love to know what he's doing, but he offers another imprinting, but I feel like I still get to choose it in the end. I can feel almost a presence that's not me, a new vibration. I mean, especially at first, it would almost like blindside me. And I would ask him what time he worked on me, and it was the time it would happen. I could just feel almost like as if I stepped into a new atmosphere in my, you know, it was very tangible. And I felt it would also cause a subconscious relaxation, like my body system would relax when he would work with me. And I could feel a newness, like a new sense of me. And then interestingly, almost every time it was followed by some sort of old like subconscious patterning that would also rise at the same time. So I'd feel good, and then there'd be this old belief system, these old thoughts and feelings that I couldn't access on my own that kind of popped up. And then I told Daerick that it's been a process where I get to choose to believe them or not, to keep that alignment that he's helped create. So it's been really, really cool to work with him.